Hello, and welcome back to the Glowing Mama Method podcast, where we discuss healthy and sustainable weight loss for women over the age of 40. And today we have a very special guest, Zora Benhamou from Hack My Age. Zora is a gerontologist, which is the study of aging, correct? Mm-hmm. And you are an advocate for women who are going through that menopause shift. And you're just a wealth of information when it comes to how to navigate this time period. And I'm so glad to have you on here today. So thank you for joining.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to dive into all things menopause and aging. And I know some of these topics may not be like a little bit stigmatized, but we're going to break some of that stigma.
Absolutely. And you've just gone through some of your own personal stuff with some hip replacement surgery and hernia surgeries, and you've learned a lot through your experience, yes?
Yes, I never thought I'd be in this position at my age, and I'm 54. And when somebody told me I had to have a hip replacement, I said, nah, that's going to be when I'm 70, right? Because I'm ageist. We're all some sort of ageist, but we're going to explain why that happened and how to avoid certain things like that.
Yeah. And I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And I think maybe it's part of your divine purpose because you're in this line of work that you had to be put through the fire so that you can gather the information that you need in order to continue on this journey of helping people navigate, aging in general and all of the things that might come with it.
Yes, definitely. As a gerontologist, now I have so much empathy for people who are immobile or struggling with chronic pain. I never had a pain to purpose story. When you meet a lot of people in the wellness industry, they're like, oh, I was suffered from this and I got my way out of it. I didn't have any of that. Everything was pretty smooth going until this. And I always say that there are worse things in life. And so actually, quite lucky that this is the worst of it, then I am very fortunate.
Beautiful. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some hacks that we can utilize as women who are going through that aging process, and kind of in particular, I'm more interested in learning about menopause. And I know you talk a lot about delaying menopause, and maybe we can start there. But why should we be thinking about delaying menopause? Isn't it just genetic and we just have our, fate set out for us? So what is within our control as we start to navigate this time period?
So I want to first preface this that there are two camps here. There's people who say ovarian rejuvenation, or let's say keep your ovarian function as long as you can. And there is some people, not as many in my world, who say, wait a second, not so sure if we want to delay menopause. And I'll explain a little bit why. And for the short answer for the ones who say, well, I don't know if you want to delay it, because what they would say is every time you're having a menstrual cycle, right? You're going through the cycle of menstruation, you're trying to get pregnant, you're trying to have a bleed. And every time you have these surges in, say, estrogen or certain hormones, this is proliferative. Estrogen is proliferative. It makes things grow. So it's great for our bones. It's great for our muscles. We want things to grow, but we always want them in balance as well with, you don't want to always have growth. You want to have some balance with that and breakdown as well. So what those people would say, and well, wait a second, we may not want you because you're actually putting yourself at risk at your age, once you get older, of cancer growth. Okay. And to me, it doesn't make much sense, because if that's the case, then we'd have all these 20-year-olds getting cancer when they're at their peak. Estrogen is way higher than a woman going through menopause. But I just wanted to say there is some research out there. There's a camp out there. So I always like to share both sides of the story, and I confuse women completely with my podcast because I will bring on two experts saying opposite things, but I do believe it's important that we get all the information and then make a decision what's best for us. So there's that camp. They say, well, we don't always want to have proliferative, and especially as we're aging, probably not. But I'm of the camp where we say, no, I think it's good to delay menopause because you are actually having your ovaries actually functioning. It's a signal to the body that you're still young, you're still functioning, you have purpose on this life. Not that you don't when you go into menopause, but your body is thinking, all right, we still need to keep working here. And I believe that is a good thing to delay, because then you're also delaying these diseases of aging, because there are very strong correlations with the loss of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone with the disease of aging, say osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, all these other things that we're sort of scared of. But we can lower those risks or delay those risks when we have our ovaries functioning and our body functioning well. So it's not just about ovarian function, it's about the whole system working together. Because if you think about when a woman loses her estrogen, she suddenly has hot flashes and night sweats. If she's having night sweats, she's probably not sleeping well. And we know what happens when we're sleeping. There's this whole cascade of cool stuff that happens while we're asleep in terms of repair and rejuvenation. And that is really, really key, so that we have a good night's sleep, so that we can actually go to the gym or go exercise outdoors in the morning. And then once we're exercising, we're actually have more of a tendency to eat healthy things. So it's, again, not just keeping the ovaries in a great function, but it's the whole body. If we can eliminate some of these menopause symptoms, then we have a better shot, we have a better chance of a good, strong health span, which is the number of years you live free of disease and full of vitality, not just lifespan and having 30 years of disease and medications and doctor visits. So just wanted to, preface that there is that. So I'm in the camp. I think it's better because there are also just not only these diseases of aging, but when you think about, if you want to ask me how, okay, I believe that, let's say it's important to delay menopause, then there are 12 factors that are sort of determining your menopause age. And menopause, let's say, is 12 consecutive months without your period. That's like, I think it's the stupidest thing in the world, because it's a one-day event, and a lot of things depend on that mental birth date. But we know it's a whole transition here. But I think if you want to go through some of those factors, there's some things that we can't control, which is like genetics, your race, your ethnicity. Then there's things that you can control, like the number of pregnancies you have, your weight, if you smoke, if you abuse alcohol, if you exercise. And again, when you exercise, if you exercise too much, you may actually get into an early menopause, and if you exercise appropriately, you may be able to delay it. So I don't know if you want to go through some of those things, but just to let you know that there are risk factors associated with going in menopause, with the loss of our hormones.
Yeah, and I think from an intuitive place for myself, like even I've only had one pregnancy, but I missed my period. Like I really did miss that, because it feels like that monthly detoxification. And the more I speak to women who are past the transition, they just look at you into your soul and say, just appreciate it while you have it, because you're going to miss it when it's gone. And I feel like for that reason alone, I land in the same camp as you in terms of like, let's delay this as much as possible.
So delaying is one thing if you believe that these, and there's plenty of research showing these associations with lower morbidity when you delay menopause, right? Or lower all-cause mortality. So if you believe that, then great. But there's also the fact that okay, you may go, okay, I want to lower my risk of disease, but I also want to not feel horrible during this transition, because if you go scroll through social media, it's frightening what you're seeing. And some of them are joking and some of them are really ranting. And it seems like we're all going to fall off a cliff when we go through this transition. We're going to lose our mind and we're going to lose our body and we're going to lose control. And it's not always that way, right? So we have to think about, there are 25% of the women who have like every single symptom on the sun. They are really suffering. They have very frequent and very intense symptoms. And there's 103 of them, if you really want to think about it. Wow. And we only talk about like 4 or 5 of them. But then on the other end of the spectrum, there's 25% of the women who feel nothing. I don't know. It's as easy. Nothing's changed. On the outside, a lot of changes are happening on the inside that you're not feeling, and those are the silent killers. And then we have the rest of us, the other 50%, somewhere else on the spectrum. So unfortunately, the media gets a lot of attention with the horror stories. So, but if you think about, even one hot flash, somebody's like, I don't even want to deal with one hot flash. Well, fine. Let's, what can we do to not only navigate through this transition with ease without feeling anything, and as a gerontologist, I'm always saying, I want to protect my future self. I want to do what I can today so that my 70-year-old self isn't diagnosed with Alzheimer's, because Alzheimer's doesn't start when you're 70. It starts 20 years before. And we're not feeling Alzheimer's coming on. I mean, unless we feel brain fog, and sometimes we mix it up. We're like, oh my God, is these early signs of dementia? And sometimes it is, and many times it isn't if you are in this perimenopause to menopause transition.
Okay, so I'm hearing two things, that there is a way to navigate symptoms. So we don't have to have this like sentence of like error or 10 years that, like the classic menopause, like our mood is going to go to crap. We're going to gain weight. Everything is going to be terrible. We're not going to remember anything. We're going to sleep terribly. So I'm hearing that's, we don't have to suffer as much as, we think we do. And then B, which I think these two things coincide, is that when we correct for these symptoms, that we're also doing ourselves a really nice service for later in life for disease prevention. Yes?
Exactly. And it's, again, not about keeping our period for as long as possible. And that's just sort of a byproduct of being healthy and trying to do the best that we can to alleviate symptoms or make this transition as smooth as we can. So again, there's the associations, but it's really about feeling good in your body and having enough energy and stamina to be able to live our lives as long as we want to.
Yeah. And quality of life as we move through, right? It's not just about living long. It's about feeling good while we're here.
Yeah, exactly. And feeling great. I when people say I want to live to 100 or 120 or 130, some people are very ambitious. That's great. But most people in this space would say, but I want good quality of life, right?
So you talk about being a biohacker. So for anyone who doesn't really understand what that term actually means, like for me, I think of biohacking as like, I don't know, like Dave Asprey comes to mind. And I think of like, he wants to live like, I don't know, hundreds of years. And to what you're saying, right? Is biohacking mostly about trying to increase the length of your life and quality while you're here? Or what else is there to this biohacking thing?
Yeah, it depends on who you talk to. Like Dave Asprey would be, he likes to live a long, long life. And of course he says in good condition, right? There's these caveats, but biohacking, in case people don't understand what that is, the short answer is health optimization. Okay. Most people understand, okay, I want to optimize my health. I just don't want to be regular, because regular and normal is sick. The average American is taking how much medication, and even at the age of 50, after the age of 50, it's just like, wow, we start to be on medication. We need to go to the doctor more frequently. We're having surgeries, things like that. So we want to have a good quality of life. So that's the short answer. But biohacking is so much more than that. I always like to describe this pyramid, this biohacking pyramid. So if you think the base of the pyramid, it's the stuff that we all know. There's nothing new here. It's just getting the right nutrition, having appropriate exercise and recovery, managing the stress, managing the sleep, and optimizing that. And then obviously your community, your purpose in life, and all these things are really, really important. That's the foundation. That's biohacking to me. But a lot of people think it's the middle and the top tiers. And the middle tier of biohacking is the cool stuff that we think about, supplements, or we think about sauna use and ice bathing. And these are things you don't really need a doctor's prescription for, but ask your doctor, obviously, if you do have any conditions. And then the very top tier is something you probably would need a doctor for, and that may be hormone therapy. It could be injections for PRP injections for rejuvenation. There's ovarian rejuvenation. There's all kinds of cool stuff out there, gene therapy, but a lot of people focus on those things and they don't realize that the foundation is absolutely necessary. And just from what I've observed and seen is that if you don't have this foundation correct, then you are the middle and the top tiers that just don't work so well or at all. And there's no point. It's like trying to build a kitchen in a burning house. I could try, but it'll burn down eventually if you're not taking care of it, right?
Yeah, like there's no point fine tuning if you don't have a solid foundation, essentially. Yeah.
That, yes, but to be fair, in my community of women who are going through this transition to menopause, they find it really hard to get the foundation because they're feeling so bad and they need the top tier. They may need some hormone therapy so that they can finally have a good night's sleep, or they may need CBD, or they may need some kind of peptide to help them sleep through the night so that they actually wake up with more energy, and then they can do all the things for the foundation. And so I would say it's there's some doctors who say, I'm not going to prescribe you hormones unless you actually get the foundation right. And I'm like, wow, okay, that's great. I mean, I think it's important to do that. But what about the poor woman who can't even get out of bed right now? She needs a little help. And then hopefully she'll get on to all the other things. So, and I always say you can't out hormone a bad diet and lifestyle. And, you know, that's true too. But I always think these things kind of go hand in hand because it's really hard to ask somebody to do things if they're really, really stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice balance. I feel like for me, I mean, with my clients, I'll find people who are on something like an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety or something to help with their gut issues. And as much as I am Miss Natural Health advocate, I don't recommend that people just get off the meds and focus on the lifestyle stuff, because they need that support. And then we have the space and the bandwidth to build the foundation, and then they can work with their doctor to slowly come off of those meds, and then they'll feel like a whole different person because they actually have the foundation set. But they needed that medical intervention for a certain period of time to allow them to get to that space, to give them to feel like they even have the capacity to, like you say, like get out of bed, make themselves a nourishing meal, go for a walk, do all of these foundational things. Or if you don't have the will to live, you're not going to be going for a walk and making yourself a healthy meal. You're just going to be kind of wallowing in your darkness. So I like that, we have to we need the foundation, but sometimes we need a little bit of support from external places.
Yeah. And your podcast is all focusing on weight loss, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious to know your thoughts then on GLP-1s, the weight loss peptides, and do you recommend how to use those, or you say stay away from them? I'm curious to know.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, I know that there are significant risks with GLP-1 peptides, and I also think that we are overutilizing them. I did listen to a really interesting podcast. I can't remember the name of the woman. Maybe you know her name when I start to talk about it, but she was talking about essentially like microdosing GLP-1s. And
that's what people are kind of moving into. That's sort of the new trend these days.
Yeah. So I think that if utilized properly at the right doses, then maybe it can be helpful. I also know and have seen the result of it going in a really, really bad and dark direction. One thing that people need to know about GLP-1 peptides is it can promote suicidal ideation. And when you are in a place where you have a lot of weight to lose and you're feeling desperation and you're feeling like you're in a dark place, going in to utilize these peptides and then potentially overutilizing them because you just want to lose the weight so quickly, that can lead you in a terrible direction. So It's always a matter. I'm never going to be a black or white, yes or no statement. I think there's always gray area. For me, I would love to support people without the GLP-1 peptides. But again, like we just said, some people are so far gone that they need a little bit of support to just bring some of that weight down so that they can get to a place where, they can even get outside for a walk. But unless you're in that dire situation, I would say, let's start with the foundational stuff and see how it goes from there. And then if we get to that point, then where you're weight loss resistant and we don't know what's going on. Your whole case is a mystery. We've done hormone testing and all the things and we can't figure it out. And maybe that's a direction that you can think about going in, but I wouldn't necessarily lead with that unless, What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I see both. I see great success stories, and that's fabulous with the people who are getting the right guidance on how to use these, and when everything else just is not working, right? And it's kind of that desperate woman going through menopause, like, I don't know, I just can't, or I tried everything, and yeah, there's a point where sometimes you need to be these interventions, and with the right guidance and learning how to get enough protein and making sure you're going at the gym. And it's really hard when you're taking these GLP-1s, so you have no more appetite and you're feeling great, and I can eat Twinkies and still lose weight. And like, I've seen it go wrong as well with people who are not getting the guidance. They're just like, wee, like having a good time, play now and pay later. And then they gain the weight back because they haven't done the work. They haven't done the foundation. So I think it's very, very possible to do, but you really do need guidance into using these things. And one question I have, I did a great interview with an eating disorder specialist, and we were discussing about those people who have disordered eating disorders. They go on these GLP-1s and they haven't really solved the root cause. Then what's happened? Why are they eating this way? And you're just controlling the mechanics, the physics of food noise. But the moment you go off of that, well, it comes back because you haven't resolved the underlying problem, which is an emotional problem, not a physical problem. And that was very interesting for me to find out. So she says, in her experience, yeah, it's not working if you're one of those people.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that the 4 pillars that I coach people on are fitness, nutrition, mindset, and sleep. And mindset is usually the area that needs to have, like, you know, a magnifying glass on it when we're doing all the things and it's not working, right? If it's not working, there is something that is within you that needs to be unpacked. There is some learning here that needs to happen in order for you to overcome what it is that you're going through. And I find that once that piece is applied, the rest of it flows. And so for anyone who is feeling like I'm doing all the things and nothing is working and my only option is Ozempic at this point, then I would definitely recommend digging into your, you know, and work with a therapist, work with someone who can lead you through these things. You know, I have like a whole shadow work process and how to navigate negative thoughts and feelings, rewiring the brain. You know, a lot of like Joe Dispenza comes up in my work, and how to, like, okay, we have a set of wired programs in our brain and in our body, and we are essentially living unconsciously in those programs. And so how do we work to overcome those and rewire our brain for success? And when when you are so severely overweight, and you're feeling a bunch of limiting beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I'll never be able to do it, you're going to create that reality. And you might see some success on the peptides, and it might come at a high risk of, you know, bone density loss and mental health issues and a whole bunch of things that are just adding more problems to the plate. And if you're not addressing the mental, emotional, deep-rooted aspects of why you're in the position that you're in right now, then nothing's going to work long-term for you. So that's...
Well, that's where we think of these, like you said, there's a time and place for these drugs, and it could be a really great support when done correctly with the right person. Sometimes people just need these wins, these little wins, and it's like, oh my God. And if we microdose, then we can offset some of that, some of the horror stories that we're hearing. And that's why microdosing is like, okay, let's see what can get the minimum dose for the maximum effect, because there are amazing benefits when you go on these peptides as well, that people aren't realizing, that come with weight loss as well. So I think it's, and it is regulating blood sugar and all that, but it's just, if you take this and you don't do the work, I just don't see it being a solid foundation when you go off of it, unless you plan to be on these the rest of your life. So I think done correctly and done is using it as a crutch with your guidance, for example, through your health coaching, then it's like fabulous. But again, you know, it's kind of, for me, yeah, one of the last resorts. But again, sometimes you really just need these.
Yeah. Okay. a little bit of a tangent there, but I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. Yeah, everybody's got their opinions, and I'm again sort of feel like you a little bit like, well, can't say yes and I can't say no. It's just
Yeah.
that when you stick your flag in the ground, there's no room for nuance,
Yeah,
and that's where the problems come.
absolutely. Okay, so today you're going to share with us some of your top hacks for delaying the aging process or biohacking the system for optimal health and longevity. So, what would you say is your top tool?
So I would say, as a biohacker, we want to test, measure, and assess because there's no point in, say, taking vitamin D and maybe you don't need it. Maybe you're wasting your money because you get outdoors enough or your body just seems to be absorbing it really well. So testing is really, really important. And so that when you do some kind of a biohacker, some intervention, you know if it's working or not working. And then you assess and you go, yeah, I'm going to continue with this, and knowing that things may change too as we're aging. So I want people to understand, and testing can mean lab work, blood work. It could be meaning wearing a device like these, Oura rings or your Apple watches, or somehow having a device to see, to another measure if your whatever protocol is working. So, or even just pen and paper, like how do I feel today? And then every day you log. Or if you're trying to lose weight, like one of the best things is your clothes. They don't lie. So just measure with your favorite jeans or whatever it is. So it can be really expensive or it can be very simple. So, but not taking a strategic way or a plan is kind of useless. So if you're not testing, you're just guessing. Like maybe, I don't know. And so that's what I love as like the first hack, is just to know your numbers, know what your blood pressure is, know what your blood glucose is, know what your cholesterol is, and all those numbers that are important to you, because everyone has different numbers that they want to pay attention to. And of course, knowing yourself and what is it that you want to get from this life and where you want to go. So that's what just to be number one. And in terms of the second one, is for, as a woman, and actually as a man as well, is our hormones. Knowing our hormones, understanding our hormones. And I think for longevity, I think with the longevity hormone is estradiol. I think it's for women, and testosterone for a man. Women also need testosterone. So estradiol, progesterone, and testosterone are all very important hormones that decline as we age. And then of course, when we're losing these hormones, that's when all these risks go up. So understanding your hormones, whether you take hormone therapy or not, or just trying to balance out what you got left, is really, really important. So I think that's another key of hack. And understand, I'm not saying you should take hormones. I'm just saying learn about them. Learn about your own hormones and your own hormone production, and then learn about therapies, because there is a whole wide world of therapies out there, from synthetic to bioidentical. And I don't want to say natural, but like quote unquote, it's more identical to your body, and they're vastly different. And so understanding those differences, understanding your options, really important. It's got to educate yourself with that.
Can we just talk a little bit more about that? Like, I've heard recently that doctors are just putting menopausal women back on the birth control pill, which is your synthetic hormones, right? Versus bioidentical hormones that are personalized to you with a compounding pharmacy. Like, can we just talk a little bit about that nuance there and why it's important to go the bioidentical route?
Yeah, a lot of doctors give birth control. Women, when they are going through this perimenopause transition, some women may have really heavy bleeding. And then on top of that, they're like, I don't really want to get pregnant. I need some form of birth control. So they give them birth control. And this is synthetic hormones. You're not the same structure as your body, and they're very high dosages. And so there's risks that are coming with it. Benefits, I guess, you can control your bleeding. Doesn't control your periods. It just basically shuts down your hormones. Okay. To me, it's like early menopause. Why would you even want to do that? And then why do this when there are other options? Okay. Now, if there was no other option, okay, we got to make sure we don't bleed like crazy. We don't want to have babies, and we have to choose your poison. But if we have other options, then there's certainly need to be taken a look at. And bioidentical means when you're getting a bioidentical estradiol or progesterone or testosterone, it's the same structure. If you look at it in a microscope, your body recognizes this. It goes, oh, I remember you. I've seen you. And when it's synthetic, it's got to shuffle around. You will have results, like your body will respond, but there are risks to that, right? And there's risks to even hormone therapy. Oral estradiol, for example, increases your risk of stroke and blood clots. So when your doctor says hormone therapy is bad, that's what they mean. But we don't need to take oral estradiol. That's why doctors who are concerned about cardiovascular risk would just give a transdermal, a cream or a gel, a patch, because that risk is gone. So again, your doctor's wrong. I mean, they're right, but they're wrong, right? They shouldn't just be using these blanket statements. They should just educate you. Well, this is the risk, and this is, the other ones, and maybe the risks with that, depending on your personal history. And so bioidentical to me is it makes perfect sense. When we are young, we're full of estrogen or full of testosterone and progesterone, and our body's functioning really well. Why not have that? Now, there's the argument between compounded and pharmaceutical. They're both effective. The difference is that one, you go to the pharmacy, you have a prescription, they take it from the shelf, it's controlled by the FDA, it's tested, and it's exact dose of whatever it is that you need. And compounded is made in a laboratory. So there's some women who say, I can't take progesterone because there's peanut oil in there and I have an allergy. Or there's some women who say, I don't work well with 100 milligrams of progesterone. I need 58 or something. They need something very, very specific that's just not made right away, the FDA approved. So we need to have compounding labs to be making these hormones. Compounding labs make drugs. They personalize things for people because we're not all alike. Some people are not responding to a drug and they need to be modified. And so you can do the same thing with hormones. And so people who poo-poo it say they're not regulated, which is absolutely untrue. And I've interviewed compounding pharmacists who would say, actually, we're more regulated than the FDA. They have more wiggle room for error, where they come and we don't have that wiggle room. Now, when they say regulated, they do have people coming into the labs and checking and modifying. They just don't have testing on the final product. The actual hormone has been tested by the FDA. The actual whatever ingredients is in there is FDA approved. Now, once they combine it and put it in, doctors will go, well, I don't know if there's 60 grams of progesterone or if there's 70. Well, you'll know because your patient will respond. And if she's not responding, then you got to change the formula, right? And whether I think that goes for pharmaceutical or compounded. So I think it's a little bit unfair to poo-poo compounding pharmacies. And if your doctor has been using compounding pharmacies for a long time and has gone through plenty of women and men using this pharmacy with good results, then I don't see why we shouldn't trust them, or at least give it a go, especially if you need a specialized formula. And again, I do both. I take the compounded and I take stuff over, like, I don't say call it over the counter, but the pharmaceutical one. So it's just what's available to you. What are you responding to? What's your budget? Because it's also more expensive to get a personalized cream for you. But if that's working for you and that's you need that and want that, and you've got the budget for it, then more power to you. Does that make sense? I know.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And so if someone is in that perimenopause, I think I'm feeling some symptoms, what I understand is that progesterone might be a good place to start, just like a progesterone cream that you can rub on your forearms in that latter half of the cycle. Would you agree that that's a good place to start?
Yeah, for depending on who you are and what the case is. So, and one thing I want to set clear, you can buy progesterone online. I mean, you can buy estrogen online. You can get you don't need doctors, actually, to be honest, if you really want to get your hands on this. But it's always good to go with your doctor to help you through that. But some women will think, okay, they'll be sold on Amazon progesterone cream and it says natural, made from yams. So it's not like they went to the farm, picked the yam, and then pulled out the progesterone. It doesn't work like that. They're using the yam, and then they're modifying it in a laboratory. So it ends up chemical too. So it's just the chemical structure is exactly like the one in your body, because your body makes chemicals, right? So don't be fooled that, oh, this is all natural. It's not exactly, okay? It's natural to your bioidentical hormones, but it works that way. So when you go through perimenopause, there are 3 stages of perimenopause. There's the early, there's the mid, and there's the late perimenopause. So depending where you are, progesterone cream may be a fabulous solution. Mm-hmm. So in the early perimenopause, it's about the age of 35 when we start to lose progesterone. And progesterone takes a deep dive. It actually goes really fast. It's much, you always think, oh, it's estrogen, I'm going to fall off the cliff. No, estrogen happens later and it's more gradual than the huge drop in progesterone. And that's why some women in their mid to late 30s start to not sleep very well. They may feel a bit more anxious. They may start crying for no reason. You don't know what's going on, and it's very hormonal, and that is very often due to the drop in progesterone. So that's why you would say, well, for that woman, because if you measured her progesterone in a lab, her progesterone levels might be very low. It could be fluctuating. It depends, with high day. But the estrogen will, if you would have tested multiple days, it'll probably be still quite high.
Now, would you see this same drastic drop in progesterone with someone who takes very good care of their health versus not? Does lifestyle play into this at all, or is this just a matter of the hormones doing their thing over time?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. So when it comes to our hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, no matter how healthy you are, you're going to lose them. It's just going to go. Yeah. Now, I know. But having a healthy diet and lifestyle helps with those symptoms. And then at the same time, it's protecting your future self anyways. So you need to do that. And so again, this is a natural process. We're all going to go through menopause. We can delay it, but the most important thing is that we feel good during this transition, then we protect our future self. If protecting your future self is your jam, because not everybody's willing to go that far to optimize their health because it's too much work and I don't want to do it. Maybe just take me to step 1. I just need to feel better today. And then we'll talk about that stuff later. And that's fine too. Just meet the people wherever they're at. So yeah, the progesterone, in fact, that's a good question. I want to do a little bit of research to see how much of an influence the loss of progesterone would have depending on certain diet and lifestyle practices. So I will get back to you on that because I'd love to see if there is any truth to that. But you certainly can balance them out, because what's happening, you may feel bad because your estrogen is too high in relation to your progesterone. Okay, so it's not just about, let's get more progesterone in. If you've already got, if your estrogen is here and then your progesterone is just a little bit lower, and then you top it up with too much progesterone, you may start feeling groggy, you may start feeling horrible, you may start feeling more anxious because it's not in balance with estrogen. Do you see what I mean? So it's more about a balance rather than having a lot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like I have to believe intuitively that lifestyle will play a role in, that ride that you're going to take over time, whether your hormones are affected or not. Like you said, the symptoms can be easier to handle if you do have that strong foundation of health and fitness and wellness.
For sure, you will feel better. And the first time I tested my hormones, my progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen, I was 50 years old and I had 0. It was like, it's gone. And I was like, that's so weird because I feel great and I can build muscle like there's no tomorrow and I should have a lot of testosterone. I don't understand. The doctor was like, well, you should be curled up in a ball crying right now because technically, yeah, you got like post-menopausal hormones. I'm like, but I still have a period. So it was all confusing. Like, why? So even though just because you've lost all your hormones doesn't mean you're going to feel horrible. Again, my bones are still getting brittle without the estrogen, or my arteries are still getting clogged without my estrogen and the protection of that. And I don't feel that. So I may feel great, but I don't know really what's going on inside me. So that's why I love the testing, measuring, and assessing, because then we can go, oh, wow, I didn't know I can prevent something bad from happening later on than having a heart attack or break a bone and have a fall and fracture everything. So it's not so much about, we want to preserve our hormones or keep them in good condition or keep them around as long as we can, or at least in balance, but you can still get through. And I'm not saying it's great, but it's not falling off a cliff without your hormones. Again, every woman's different. Some women could just lose a little tiny bit and she's just curled up in a ball crying with just a little bit loss of her hormones, because everyone's different.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got testing, some type of testing, tracking, measuring. We've got hormone support, I'm going to say, which is going to look different depending on what age and stage and where you're at. What else you got for us?
So the one hack I love for women who are, you have male listeners as well?
Mostly female.
Mostly female. So when we go through this transition, we become more, not everybody, but many of us become more insulin resistant, meaning we can't eat the same way we used to. We're gaining weight. This is unexplained weight gain. And then we cannot build muscle. Whereas before, maybe years ago, you're like, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to become all bulky. Well, gosh, it's like, I wish it were that easy. And we have trouble. We can't build muscle anymore. It's so hard. You may be pumping iron at the gym and you're like, where is this tone? Because estrogen is gone. And estrogen is anabolic. It makes growth. It helps us with our bones and our muscles. So when we are having trouble, so I want all the lifestyle practices that you're preaching, absolutely, getting the nutrition, and we get to the gym and we have proper recovery. But when we need a little support, some people will go on steroids, which I don't think is great. There's other peptides out there that you can inject yourself in, but I love to go to blood flow restriction. It's such a cool hack that nobody knows about. Unless you're in this biohacking space.
Tell me about it. I have no idea.
And I learned about that. I learned about them just, before I started studying gerontology, and we're talking about falls and fractures and sarcopenia. I'm like, why are we talking about blood flow restriction? And they were like, what's that? I'm like, how did you not know about this? Because every older adult needs to be on it, because not everyone can go to the gym and lift heavy. So blood flow restriction bands are these bands that you would put at the very top of your arms or at your legs. And what they do is compress. They put air inside this, some people, it's like a glorified tourniquet. Some people literally use tourniquets. That's kind of dangerous, unless you know what you're doing. And then there's some that come with a blood pressure pump. So you pump it up yourself. You have a little dial. You get guidance on how strong the pressure should be. And then you have other ones that have tubes and a little machine that you can program. And then you have the Bluetooth stuff. That's the high tech and the most expensive stuff. And it's your phone. It's an app, and it's really cool. But what these do, they compress the limb, and it's a partial occlusion of the blood flow. It's not completely cutting you off. That would be bad. But you're partially occluding the blood flow. And then when it releases, you get a burst of growth hormones. You get a burst of really positive effects on the body. When you have more growth hormone, you are able to build muscle better and faster and easier. And you are also getting more elasticity of the vascular tissue. And that is really important for cardiovascular health. And so there are some bands out there. Most of them are actually around the limb, and they don't move. They're constant. And they kind of hurt after a while. You're like, oh, I got to get these things off, because it's usually, see the limb goes more pinkish. It shouldn't go blue or purple, otherwise you've done too far. But some of these devices actually have a lot of programming and restriction, and you need guidance to do this, especially when you first get started. And then there's bands that have a gentle compression for 30 seconds and then a release for 5 seconds. And that, you're like, is this really doing something? Because I hardly feel anything, maybe a little bit. But boy, you get instantaneous, the muscles are pumped, and it is unbelievable. So if you Google or YouTube blood flow restriction, you'll see two camps. You see the bodybuilders who are like, I want to get more gains with less weight. And then you have the rehab people who are dealing with people with injuries, surgeries, and cannot move. And they need to preserve their muscle mass. And that's what you'll find. And I think we need to really have another category here as well in terms of menopausal women who are just not seeing the effects of all the hard work they're doing. So I would say these bands are not to replace exercise. They're there to support it, like hormones or GLP-1s or whatever. It's there to help you get to the next level or support what you're already doing. So I think, and again, it's not just putting these bands on and not eating protein or not getting enough sleep for growth. I mean, you need to do all the other things, but there's certainly a great tool for people who are struggling, or people like me who had surgeries and I didn't want to lose my muscle mass, or I had osteoarthritis for 2 years. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't do impact. All I could do was boring mobility and rehab that you're like, that's not going to grow muscle. But I have grown muscle even with these bands with as limited mobility as I have. And I've seen it. I've been recommending this type of technology for like 3 or 4 years now. And the feedback I get every time is that it works. Whether you're buying the cheapo, tourniquet or you're buying the expensive one, it just works. And so I think you just need the guidance to do it. And if you have, especially like if I think about my 85-year-old father-in-law, I'm not going to get him to the gym. I'm not going to get him to do heavy weight, but I can put some bands on them, the gentle ones that are cyclical. Again, if people have heart conditions, you obviously get the clearance from your doctor, but honestly, they have grown muscle on a 104-year-old woman. And you can Google this or YouTube it, and you'll see this woman wearing these bands, and they'll tell the story of how she's grown it. So it's not like you're too old or you're too sedentary. I was started using these bands when I was just on my computer doing nothing. And so it's honestly it's been a lifesaver for me, and I know it's just works for other people. So that's my muscle hack.
Wow, like my mind is blown. I have a million questions. So the first thing that I'm wondering, because when I think of like, okay, we're restricting blood flow and then we're opening it up again. It's kind of like when I was doing yoga teacher training, we worked with wooden dowels and we would put it in the crease behind our knees and sit on it. And then we would go into like a downward dog and we would talk about how like that blood flow is now like fresh, oxygenated and nutrient rich blood is coming through, which is just awesome. And it did feel really cool too, right? You're sitting on this wooden dowel and it's restricting the blood flow. And then all of a sudden it's like this gush.
Hormones and enzymes and lots of good things that are happening. And and actually, when you think about somebody who just had an injury or recovery, all that blood flow is going straight to that injury. And I think every surgeon should have their patients on these. Every physio needs to be working with these. And honestly, there are very few people who know about it. And I honestly want people to know more, because it's such a simple, like you said, you got a wooden dowel, honestly. And the guy who created, there's a brand called Katsu. He is a Japanese guy. So this started in the 1960s. Like, this is nothing new. This has been around for a long time. And he noticed when he was in the temple praying or something like that. If you've ever gone to Japan and you have to sit on your knees, right? You don't, and it's really hard. You see all the tourists are like, oh my God, I got to get off of this in like 10 minutes, while the Japanese are just like staying put. And he noticed his leg muscles were so pumped up when he did that. He's like, after temple, oh my gosh, my legs are so muscular. Yeah. And so then he invented these Katsu bands, and actually those bands itself were created and tested on cardiac rehab patients.
Wow.
So it didn't start with like bodybuilding, at least in that brand. I mean, there's other bands that are awesome, and they started for other reasons, but honestly, that's kind of, when you said you did a yoga pose with the dowel, it reminded me of that story I heard from him. That's how he decided to, discover, create these blood flow bands.
Yeah. And you said human growth hormone increases with this?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And there's a lot of research out there. This is, again, nothing new. It's been around since, at least I know, from the 60s, maybe even earlier. But you will find, if you go to PubMed, right, and you research blood flow restriction, thousands of studies will come out. And a lot of them are really, really good.
Yeah, well, definitely a rabbit hole to dive right into.
Yeah.
Okay, so blood flow restriction. And I love it because there's no medical intervention. It's just a band. And you're utilizing your own body's resources to essentially help you preserve muscle.
Yes. And again, with your protein.
With your protein and your sleep and your exercise.
Exactly. And if you exercise, so I've done various tests with and without exercise. So when I have the bands on, if I'm using the ones that are more constrictive and constant, literally picking up a baby weight, and I'm going, oh my God, it feels like a truck. because it's like, it's hard. You feel, oh my God. And you see your arms are like all pumped up. You see the veins coming out because you're partially restricted. So and then you do the same exercise with the weight and you go, wow. And you can see, if you measure, your heart rate even goes up when you're on the restriction, when it's constant. You can see the rise. It hurts to lift a baby weight. Your heart rate is going up. And then the moment you do the same exercise without the bands, heart rate comes down and you're like, oh, this is too easy. So during COVID, a lot of bodybuilders were using the blood flow restriction bands because they couldn't get to the gym. They were at home with their baby weights, or they didn't have massive weights, but they knew they can still get some gains with the blood flow restriction. So it's just cool.
And so there's different protocols in terms of like how long you should wear it and what, like, were you wearing it all the time when you were recovering from surgery, or?
So I have two bands. Yeah, the ones I had, the ones that constrict for 30 seconds and they were cyclical. I would wear them. I mean, you gradually build up. When you start with those bands, you go for like 10 minutes the first time, and then you can build up to a little bit longer. But I'd been using them for a while. So I was probably about 45 minutes on the upper body and 45 minutes on the lower body while I'm cooking, while I'm on the computer, while I'm going for a walk. Just wearing
so you
them
can
all the
do
time.
things, like you can move. You don't have to just sit there and be in blood flow restriction.
No. And then I started using these other bands called Suji bands, and those are constant. And I started using them a couple months ago, and great results as well. I used those when I was already in rehab mode. I was already going to the gym. And so when I use bands in general, and even before I found these other brands, I was just using the blood pressure cuff one. I would test and measure my muscle mass with exercise and without exercise. And I was showing better gains when I did exercise with them. So, and the research shows that too. And, if you're doing exercise, obviously you're going to get more gains. But even if you cannot do exercise for whatever reason, this is better than nothing. And you can still gain muscle. Not as much as if you were exercising, but you certainly will maybe either not lose it or you'll be able to gain a little bit more.
Well, I can see in your arms something's working for you, because you've been off. Like you've been off for quite some time, right? Like you're still in somewhat of a rehab mode now, and and you've maintained your muscle mass. So the proof is in the pudding, folks.
Exactly. There's so much there. It's a lot of hacks. I would say it's all those, don't expect muscle just by putting these on and sitting on the TV eating chips, right? It doesn't work like that, but as a supplement to your already healthy diet and lifestyle, fabulous.
Okay, you've got a couple more hacks for us.
The next one is free, because the other band, you get to buy something. And the next one is breath work. And I think we dismiss it too much, or we don't understand it, or we've never heard it. We're like, I already know how to breathe. I'm breathing. Like, what's wrong with me? But breath work or learning how to breathe. And I've been trained in functional breathing through the oxygen advantage method. And there's 1,000,001 ways to breathe. And what you do in your yoga and what you do in other classes, there's a purpose and reason. I'm never saying this one's better or worse. It just depends on what your goal is. But for me, I love this training because it's kind of like, what do you do the other 23 hours of the day outside of your yoga breathing? It's how we're breathing all throughout the day. How you're breathing during the day dictates how you breathe at night. And even how you're breathing when you're exercising can impact your results. So if there's anything you take away from this interview, it's breathe through your nose. Okay, keep the mouth closed, breathe through your nose, other than when you're doing some other type of breath work, right? But generally all throughout the day. And our nose is made for breathing. Our mouth is made for talking, for eating, maybe some other things, but not for breathing. Imagine we have this big hole, right? Things can go in there. When we have our nose, the holes are a lot smaller, harder to get bacteria and viruses and things in there. And we have all these little hairs that are filtering things out so it doesn't go into the system. We have the mucous membrane. We have a lot of defense mechanisms through our nose. So it's really good to protect yourself by breathing through the nose, but you're also becoming more efficient. There's a lot of chemical exchange happening in our lungs when we breathe through our nose. We also get more nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, meaning your blood vessels are opening up and getting more blood flow. So there's really a lot of benefits to learning how to breathe through the nose and keeping your breath low and light. And normally we're breathing about 12 14 breaths per minute, the average adult, unless you're in a panic state. You're breathing upper chest and as fast as you can through your mouth. But we want to slow it down and try to breathe 6-7 breaths per minute. And if you can time yourself on a watch, you can figure out how to do that. But you really, breathing through the nose is such a simple hack, and it helps lower blood pressure, lower our heart rate. It helps us sleep better. It helps us get into a calm state. There's so much magic that happens. And if you read, Patrick McKeown was my instructor, and he wrote The Oxygen Advantage, created this program, and he wrote several books. And one of the books is called The Breathing Cure. And it's like those books that you read, and it cures everything, and weight loss and eczema and everything. I mean, and half the book is research. So he's got all the research to back it. Whether it really works for you or not is debatable, but it is that powerful. And I think it's something to spend a bit of time on with an instructor or on a YouTube video or whatever it is, read a book, learn how to breathe through menopause. It's going to help you so much. It can help you with hot flashes. It can help you with your sleep and insomnia. It's such a great tool. Again, it's been around for millennia, and now we have science to back it up if you really want that.
Yeah, and it's so accessible. And I think just even, you think of like when you're having a panic or anxiety moment, there's a reason why people say, take a deep breath. Like it really does help to calm the nervous system just to take a few seconds and be aware of your breath and what it's doing. I'm curious about mouth taping. Are you a fan?
Yes, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I've seen too many people have great results. So mouth taping is, again, it's not for everybody in the sense that, you're just shutting your mouth out. Sometimes they make these tapes with a little hole in it because some people can get a lot of anxiety knowing that their mouth is shut, and then they panic, and of course they can't sleep. So you can get different types of mouth tape, even for children as well, and train them how to breathe or sleep with their mouth closed. But what's happening is if you wake up with a dry mouth, you're a mouth breather. You're breathing because you may go, I don't know if I'm breathing. I don't know. But usually if you're snoring and you have your mouth open, you're going to just need to chug that water the moment you wake up. And that's a sign that you need to learn how to breathe through your nose. And the mouth tape is really helpful for that. It helps train the muscles to keep them closed while you're asleep. And so when people who I've been working with, they will report deeper sleep, fewer awakenings, feeling more refreshed in the morning, just good results. My first testimonial when I first discovered mouth tape through Patrick and this training was my son at the time. I think it was 22, and he's not into biohacking or health or anything. And I had the tape and I was like, yeah, you can try this. And he did. And he loved it. And he used it for months and months. And then his girlfriend started using it. And they both saw tremendous difference in their sleep. And I'm like, you're 20, you should be sleeping like a 20-year-old, right? But they did. And that was my first sort of testimonial that I was really impressed with. So I think it's cheap. It's something definitely worth trying and seeing how it goes. And again, don't give up on the first time. And if you have a beard, there's a special tape for people who have beards. Definitely, if your partner is snoring, beg them to please wear mouth tape for your own sake, even if you are sleeping with your mouth closed, just because they're disrupting your sleep.
Yeah.
Sleep is so precious as it is. We're aging. And again, I think sleep is medicine. So we need to get it.
That's a golden gem right there, because a lot of women come to me and, sleep is one of the pillars that I work with. And okay, well, what's stopping you from sleep? And a lot of the time it's partners. My partner snores. And, yeah. So I was often recommending like the nose strips, but the mouth, I never thought the mouth taping would be a really great one to recommend for snoring as well.
Yeah, they're both good. It's good to try them together, because if you have a deviated septum and you can't breathe through your nose, you imagine you closing your mouth, you're going to suffocate. So having those people need to open those airways so that they can use mouth tape, right? So there's people who, will struggle, but doing breath work, learning how to breathe functionally can regulate that deviated septum, and those people who have struggled to breathe through their nose, you can change that.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have to practice in your waking hours so that your body knows how to nose breathe when you're sleeping. Because if you're going through your waking hours, breathing through your mouth, then you've got no chance when you're asleep. It makes a lot of sense.
There is some interesting theory that some scientists are looking into in terms of number of breaths you have and how long you live. Nothing's been proven yet, but I thought that's interesting.
I believe it. I think that they will definitely find some correlations there, because you think about like the people that you see, like one of the mantras that I'm always repeating to my clients is like, how can I choose peace and how can I choose ease in this moment? Because we all work ourselves up with the stories that we tell ourselves and the meaning we apply out to things. And we don't realize we're just revving our systems. And you see those people who are just always calm, cool, and collected. They're always breathing slow because they're just in a relaxed and peaceful state. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does make a lot of sense. But now we're like, where's the science to prove it?
Yeah, now let's back it up. Okay, we have one more hack.
The last hack, in the biohacking community, people don't seem to talk about this enough, but it came up in my gerontology, and I want to bring this into the biohacking community, and is the term community. The community you have is super important, and having solid relationships is important. People you trust, people who have your back. As you age, you sometimes are dependent on people to help you out, and you have to learn how to ask and not have pride to say I can do this all by myself. Sometimes we need to do that. And there was a very interesting study called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. I quote this all the time. I think it's one of the most fascinating studies because it's one of the longest longitudinal studies on adults ever. It started in Harvard in 1938 and started with the students, males, and then eventually went to females, and eventually went to lower income families, and then it looked at the offspring, and it's been running. It's still, this next generation is still going. So after 70 so years of research, and it started out with just questionnaires and some blood tests and basic things. In the 1930s, they didn't have a whole lot. And then it's advanced to genes, and you can do scans, and always with talking to the people and getting back, meeting them every year. And so what they concluded after 70 odd years of research was that more than smoking, more than exercise, more than diet, that made the bigger impact, or the biggest impact on living longer, happier, was having strong, solid relationships, happy, positive relationships. And that is huge. So I always recommend people to nurture your network. It's loneliness kills. We know if you are lonely, which is very different than being alone, right? Some people can be alone, that's fine. But if you're feeling lonely, even though you have tons of people around you, the impact it has on the physical body is equivalent to 17 cigarettes smoking a day. And that's pretty bad. So that's why they always say loneliness kills. And if you put those two together, like, oh wow, like meaningful relationships, and that's helping us live a longer, happier life. And then we have the loneliness on the other spectrum, we better start working. And it doesn't mean you need a ton of friends. You just need two. So we have to think about these things as we're aging. We don't think about them now, but when you're younger, we are much more social. We are going out looking for opportunities. We go to the parties, we go to the events, we're trying to make connections, we're the leads. And as we get older, we realize that we don't have as much time on the planet, and we tend to nurture the network that we have already, and foster those positive relationships, and start pruning out the toxic relationships in our lives, because who wants to spend the rest of your lives with people who are sucking the life out of you?
Amen. There's definitely something to be said for not just any community, but aligned community, a community that feels good and understands you, and that there's a, co-understanding. But also I think something that's coming up for me around that is, myself included, but a lot of people that I work with are that type A personality, perfectionist. I could do it all on my own. I don't ask for help. It's hard for me to receive help. It's this loop of self-sabotage that I think ties into this community piece, because it's not necessarily just having good people around you. It's do I even have the capacity to reach out and ask for support or ask for help in these moments when I am in need? And I think that's a muscle that we have to flex, because as we get older, we can't necessarily do everything by ourselves. Yeah, I think that's a really important piece of community, because even as you said, you can be surrounded by people and still feel lonely. And that's either because you're misaligned with the group that you are a part of, or that you are just not able to tap in for whatever reason. So what's the, this is where my mindset pillar comes up, where it's like, well, what's the limiting belief there? Like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not capable. Like, what's coming up for you, and where is that rooted? And how can we unpack that to the point where you can actually just call somebody up and say, hey, I really need your help, or I really need a listening ear in this moment. Like, I think that's a really, really important piece of community, is to actually just utilize it and feel worthy of the support that is coming your way. And then also to put yourself out there to be of service and support to your network as well.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. 100%. And then, but it's work too, to nurture that network. I mean, some people, it comes naturally, it's fine. Others, you need to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. You're speaking straight into the introvert in me. I'm like, okay, I get it. Got to reach out. Yeah, no, it is easy to fall into your just regular flow, right? And not reach out. But no, it's important. Okay, so I think that wraps all of the hacks that you wanted to share with us today. And if someone is looking to learn more from you, work with you, find you, where can we find you, and what capacity can we work with you in if we need?
So everything is on the hackmyage.com website. If you can't remember that, you can remember Zora the Explorer, like Dora the Explorer, but Zora. And you'll find me. I pop up there too. I'm on all the social media. Every time it's Hack My Age. Quite simple. I have a free Facebook group if you want to learn more about biohacking menopause. It's called Biohacking Menopause Support Group. And then I also have a private membership if you want more attention, want to work a little bit closer, then you can go to my website and you'll see my membership group there, also called Biohacking Menopause.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to be joining that group. I'm 38, so I'm starting to just dive into this world of perimenopause, menopause, and figuring it all out myself. So
yeah. It's so good. You're so aware. I had no idea what perimenopause was when I was going through perimenopause, didn't understand it. And I think it's just so empowering. Not that everything is perimenopause and everything is your hormones, but they certainly play a role. And just being aware of that is gold, and it's empowering. And I'm so proud of all the girls who are 20s, 30s, learning about it. I mean, it's fabulous. It's just going to serve you. And if there's one thing I wish I did when I was younger, in my 30s, let's say, or in 20s, I wish I tested my hormones. I wish I knew what was regular and normal for me, because when you get to perimenopause, it's a little harder. Like, you don't really know. It's where you are and what's normal for you and what's not. So it's kind of cool to know what's going on. So if you can just get a clue and dial in and understand your hormonal fluctuations as well, and go, oh, that's probably progesterone rising, or that's probably estrogen declining. That's in a good way, like during your cycle, knowing your menstrual cycle and understanding those fluctuations and your rhythm and what's a normal rhythm for you is really, really important.
Yeah. And thanks to people like you, we have a lighthouse, right? I feel like, in previous generations, like, who was your lighthouse to, like, did you have anyone in your 20s and 30s that was talking about this stuff? And no. The answer is no. And now you've created that, and now you are that lighthouse. So I think, like, comes back to, like, the divinity of it all, is that you had to go through what you had to go through in order to be the pillar of light for others that you are today. So I appreciate you and all that you have to share. And thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. It's been such a great conversation with you. And I'm really just so appreciative of having me on your platform to speak about this and spreading the word. So nothing to fear, girls.
Nothing to fear. It's going to be okay.